So thank you for everybody joining us on Facebook. If you're on, please share the feed. We greatly appreciative. And I know we're still waiting on some people, but why don't we start with that introduction? My name is Dustin Thompson. I'm the Volunteer and Community Outreach Coordinator for the Delaware chapter of the Sierra Club. The Sierra Club is one of the nation's oldest, actually it's the nation's oldest environmental advocacy organization dating back into the 1800s. In Delaware, we specifically work around issues of renewable energy and equitable energy policy, generally speaking. We work a lot on a wide variety of different environmental justice efforts. We also do a lot of outings when we're not in a pandemic lockdown. So we do a lot of hiking and biking and different outdoor stuff. Hope to get back to that soon. We've been kind of cleared to do a little transition back out into the outdoors. So looking forward to that. Why don't we do also a round of introductions for our speakers today? Why don't we, I'm just going to go by the list in the participant menu on my end here. And that means Cecilia, you are up first. Care to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about the Village Tree?
Hi, good evening, everyone. Wow. Well, the Village Tree is a grassroots, community-based nonprofit organization. We've been in existence, incorporated since 2012. We are currently operating in Wilmington, Delaware, where we have a community garden. And in our garden, we have just a few flowers, but we mainly have vegetables, fruits, and herbs that we grow on raised flower beds. And but the garden is just a hook, and we just kind of follow that mantra: if you feed them, they will come. So when people come to our garden, they actually learn that there are other resources out there that can help them sustain. And our mission is to teach people or empower people to learn of other sustainable opportunities and options to be more self-sufficient and be healthy, happy, and whole.
Wonderful. Elisa, I forget how to pronounce your name. I'm sorry. But you are up. You are up next.
It's Elisa.
Elisa. All right. Thank you.
Like Lisa with an E. So, hi everybody. Thank you so much. I'm just really excited to be on this panel with these women that are doing amazing work, working their butts off, and you are my people. So I'm excited to be talking with you tonight. So I'm Elisa King. I'm the director of Bellevue Farms. It's a program of the Bellevue Community Center in Wilmington. On site, we have an urban farm where we grow for education and for production purposes. Currently, we are working on expanding our educational offerings to the youth that participate in Bellevue Community Center programs, but also for the first time going to be doing this education off-site, working with another community that we tend to do various services through the community center for. So we're looking forward to that. I'm also the project coordinator for Urban Acres Produce new business model, where we hope to have a business that's going to increase equity for access to fresh food and job opportunity in communities in Wilmington, and also provide a new market for urban agriculture in particular. And I sit on the steering committee of the Delaware Urban Farm and Food Coalition.
Wonderful. Thank you for joining us. Karen, you're up next.
Hello, everybody. It's so nice to be here on this esteemed panel with all these wonderful people. I own Honeybee Kitchen and Market, which is a farm to table and zero waste grocery store in Trolley Square. We also do prepared foods to try to not waste anything that might be looking sad and unsellable. So we have a big composting program there. So we have that. We were also a kind of a community hub where I try to really work with the community to let people know about events, activities, organizations, opportunities to advocate for themselves through policy or through gatherings, letters, calls, things like that to politicians. We're really active with our local music scene. We're trying to get into being active with our local arts scene. So that's in Trolley Square in Wilmington. I also recently, this past year, started a small urban farm in Old Newcastle with another farmer. I'm in my second year of training as a beginner farmer with Future Harvest CASA. Totally recommend that to anyone who's interested in farming. Miss Rose is in that with me as well. And I'm a climate activist. I'm a species extinction activist. I'm learning how to be an organizer. I think I'm shifting a little bit with my work there. Really working towards social and environmental justice and a transition to a climate solution as fast as we can, which includes localizing our food as much as possible, which is the point of this whole topic today, urban agriculture and food security for our most vulnerable people. So thank you for having me, Dustin.
Great. And last but certainly not least, Rose.
Hi, good day. Thank you all for having me today. Thank you for your time and your energy today. My name is Rose Chantal Porter, and I am a proud owner of a wellness business called KAVI Wellness, where we offer holistic healing to diverse groups of people. And so if you're familiar with my business or familiar with me, traditionally you may find me on the mat as a certified yoga instructor. Though when we speak about holistic healing, we're talking about a lifestyle change. And so that looks like the work that we do in the soil. Currently, right now in Wilmington, Delaware, KAVI is in about 4 different green spaces in the Wilmington area. And we do the pairing where we're offering herbs as I am studying to be a herbalist. We are planting herbs, we are planting fresh foods and fruits to be able to produce a month of garden-led food. KAVI Wellness has started a challenge to see for those that have access to fresh foods, what it looks like to let that be sustainable in 2021, when we have so many questions and so many issues around food access and food security. So I am so thankful and blessed to be in this space and on the Zoom call with these amazing women and the work that they do. As Karen also mentioned, I am a part of the Future Harvest CASA Beginner Farmer Training Program, where I am hopefully going to be able to transform my baby urban farming skills into something that can really help our community, like the women that we have on this panel today. So thank you so much for having me, and I am thankful to be here.
Wonderful. All right. So for those that this is the first time being on a live stream, I'm going to just spotlight all of our wonderful panelists here. If you have questions kind of throughout the program, please go ahead and drop those in the chat function. If you're watching through Facebook, you can utilize the comment function in the same way. If you have any questions, just drop them in there and I will pull them into the conversation. And if we have some time towards the end, I can definitely do some kind of open mic stuff off of Facebook. Anytime that we have, random people popping up to Facebook, we're supposed to get a bunch of disclosures signed and all that sort of stuff. So try to keep it as much as possible, just the speakers on the screen over there on Facebook. So thank you guys very much for joining us, whether you're on Zoom or on Facebook. We really appreciate you. And thank you to all of our panelists for joining us today to talk about this really important topic. I often think that it's best kind of at the outset of conversations to kind of define some of what we're talking about. Obviously today we're talking about urban agriculture, and I think that may mean different things to different people. So I'd love to hear kind of briefly from each of our panelists, I think, what urban agriculture means to you. And why don't we kick it off in reverse order? We'll go with Rose first.
All right. So for me, Urban agriculture, although the term is something that's easy and something that can be defined, urban agriculture to me looks like offering holistic healing in the city, especially when we're talking about Wilmington, Delaware. When we're talking about urban agriculture, oftentimes when we're talking about agriculture, you're thinking about farms, you're thinking about larger scale. Urban agriculture is bringing that access into the city in places where they otherwise wouldn't. And so the work that I do when it comes to urban agriculture really actually taps into a lot more than just what's in the soil. When we're talking about food access, you have to address social justice. You have to address the equity that's there. And so present day in 2021, urban agriculture is actually a tool to sustain communities, to keep communities together, to build communities. And specifically, as far as this Zoom call is concerned, sustaining the communities that are in Wilmington, Delaware.
Great. All right. So anybody care to jump in to add on to that, what it means to them?
I'll go. To add on to that, because I completely agree with Rose, is that, and I've thought about this over the last week because I was on a panel where the question came up about the use and collection of data and what kind of role that plays in what we do. And I didn't have a straight answer for that. And that's because, and I had to think about it. Data has its place, absolutely. When I started to think about agriculture, it's so much more about relationship. It's about connecting to the community, connecting to people, and helping people connect to these important things that we've lost connection to. So that's our farms. Where does our food come from? And bringing urban agriculture to underutilized spaces helps. It provides a tool for us to build relationships with where our food comes from again. Whereas like when we're in the cities or even the suburbs, we've lost connection to our farms. And so we can use urban agriculture as an opportunity to really to provide education that can be a catalyst for building relationships back with the things that sustain us. And then just those relationships between people. So it's a space where people can go and get to meet new people that maybe they haven't met before, and in the community. And it's investing in our communities. And so, and that right there is just is more of that overall arching relationship building opportunity.
Great. Karen, Cecilia?
Can go. We'll go in backwards order, I guess. It's interesting. I see totally the community piece of urban agriculture so much. I mean, anytime you connect people with the land and with food, you're creating community. But I really see it as a necessity for food security. As a person who has owned a food business for 12 years, I really see the writing on the wall as far as food security. I think we have some real struggles ahead with that. And I think that we've seen in the past that the person that has the food holds the power. And if we want to uplift our communities, I think we really have to start with those basics of healthy food, fresh water, clean air. And so I really see this as a very serious endeavor. And I have, not that you guys don't as well, I'm just saying as far as not even just community, but actually our sustenance as humans, because I'm concerned about us being able to get enough food for our communities. And I always had this pie in the sky idea where I thought, actually, there should be a little store like mine in every 15, 18 block area. And in that same area, those vacant lots should have, tree fruit and some chickens and, obviously annual vegetable production, and then some in cover crop, this whole kind of closed system where each area can take care of itself and be not completely, but as much as possible, be as self-reliant and resilient as possible. So that's what I see in urban agriculture versus community gardening. I guess I kind of started my journey in community gardening, and then now we're talking about urban agriculture, which I probably would have to actually look that term up specifically, but I think of that as actual, food production on purpose. But, I also really believe in regenerative agriculture and permaculture and soil and nutrition building. So it is definitely a sense of healing and community, but also just really making sure we have food to eat and not relying on other people to make sure that we do, because I don't think we can trust to do that.
Great. Cecilia, have anything to add on there?
I got nothing. No, I'm just kidding. When I looked at that question and how it relates to where we are, I think I looked at urban agriculture as a movement. And by it being a movement, in order for it to really have a full understanding, what needs to happen is the educating of the community. So if we're talking about an urban setting, when people hear agriculture, the first thing that they're thinking about is Karen was saying, mass production or distribution, but it goes beyond that, and so with this movement, there needs to be a full understanding, because some people, when they hear agriculture, they're thinking, well, I don't like playing in dirt. No one's asking for you to play in dirt. There's so much in it. And there's so much in the urban setting and in the culture of the dirt. There needs to be a movement of the education to understand that we need to cultivate our mindset, to understand what the benefits are of how green space, healthy space, as well as healthy living and healthy eating, what we put into our body, as I said before, and what we put out. So I see it more as a movement, and cultivating and educating a community to make a better choice as to what they want to have within their settings. And it also right now we need to have the clarity and understand that there is an inequity in regards to what is being distributed within an urban setting. Just even particular vegetables, people are making decisions of other people's and assuming of what is more desirable, what is more marketable, as opposed to communicating with the community to find out what they want. So it's a bigger fish, but we can either get a bigger boat or we can just roll with it. But I think education is a very important key.
So I'd like to expand. You've all four of you kind of touched on a little bit on the kind of the differences between urban agriculture and kind of what I would frame as more rural or large scale agriculture. But is there a lot of conflict in the two communities? Is there a lot of kind of cross-sectioning, or are they rather separate? Kind of how do they compare and contrast with one another on that level?
You want me to answer that, or are you going to start going back around?
Yeah, we can start with you. You were touching on a couple times there, so that makes sense.
So it goes back to that elephant in the room. There is an underlying, no one wants to speak of, the segregation of the distribution, and that comes from as far as the USDA even. So like I said, it's a bigger fish, and I do believe that there is, a divide. I don't think it's a conflict, I think people want to paint it as a conflict, but at the end of the day, we all eat. So there's a common denominator. And anyone else want to pick up?
Yeah. Lisa?
Yeah, I would piggyback off of that to say that I think that there's an opportunity to complement one another. That, you know, there is a division, and I think in particular with the distribution of resources, but we're struggling with maintaining the farmland that we do have. So how do we get people to invest in keeping our farms, like advocating for farms? And that's where the education piece to me comes in, is to also show people that we do need farms, that I mean, we need them for our food, for our sustenance, and that we're not competing, we are complementing it. It's like any opportunity to educate on anything that people may be sort of disconnected from. And I think that as far as urban and rural ag goes, we're trying to do the same things. We're trying to feed people. Now, it might be done on a different level, and it might be done on a greater scale in one end and more education on the other. But ultimately, we are just trying to get people to realize that growing food is really important because we all need it, and that we should care. We should care about the conservation of our farms, and also who has access to it. And that's that other piece that we could really try to bridge. You know, let's have those conversations about the social inequity that we face, as whether it's the number of people who have farms, the number of people who have access to food, in those demographics. We should be having those conversations, and I feel like that should bring rural and urban ag together.
I would add, I think one thing that is super important to touch base on right now is the placement in urban ag as it relates to this era of COVID. And so when we talk about sustainability, and when we're talking about security, this past year and some change has really shaken up a lot of people in a lot of different ways, food security being one of them. And I think what's really kind of telling when we're talking about the connection between rural ag and urban ag is the resources and that fight that there is to get those resources. So whereas rural ag has a need and a consistent need on, you know, kind of to Lisa's point, on a high scale or a large scale, urban ag may be more so focused on that education piece. They're both extremely valid and they're both extremely important. But I think the part of that conversation that isn't necessarily always put up to the forefront is, why is it that urban ag's interests are put on the back burner? And in my opinion, you have to discuss who it's going to impact first. When you are a farm that is taking things to scale and is being able to produce things to scale, it does become more so about the resources and the money that's being filtered through. But when we're talking about urban ag, a lot of times we're talking about helping disproportionately negatively affected communities. And there's not a lot of economic power there. There's a lot of communal power. There's a lot of educational power. But as far as pushing the space that we're in from a capitalistic standpoint, that really isn't as much of a benefit. So then you have to ask the question, well, what has to be said, or what has to be understood, or where's the push for those that are pushing urban ag to get the same resources and same access as those in rural, without the understanding that the outcome will be fast capitalistic gain? Because what we're seeking is community support. What we're seeking is that food access. And although that may be beneficial to the people in Wilmington, if it's not necessarily generating into funding, you really have to take that in consideration if you're asking for funds and you're not going to be able to bring it back in that way, then what is that benefit? And I think we as advocates really have to stress more the importance of that education, how that impacts the health of the people in the community, how that impacts the morale of the people in the community, how that impacts the interest of people outside coming into the city of Wilmington, not just for capitalistic gain, but for the understanding of the lifestyle that can be had here. We want to grow. Growing up in Wilmington, what do we say? A place to be somebody. I want it to be a place that's healthy, a place where our kids can be able to be educated and have a holistic lifestyle and have an opportunity, and it not just be dispersed to those that are bringing something out to get financial gain into the city.
Karen, did you have anything to add before we move on to the next question?
I guess the only thing I would say is I might be missing something, but I think that we also do share the same struggles, people in urban ag. I do agree with everything that Rose just said and the other speakers, but in Newcastle County and in Delaware as a whole, we are up against it with development, with people not putting any priority on their food. I can't tell you how many times I've been approached by the county wanting me to find farms for them for their farmers markets. And I'm like, good luck. Why don't you put some of that farmers market money towards some land for some farmers? And so I really do feel like we are all in the same boat as far as getting the powers that be to prioritize food, especially for marginalized communities, and also to recognize that there is more to it than just sustenance, that it does save soil and it does build community and it does encourage a vibrant, community. So in that regard, it is going to be nice that we all can hopefully work together. Although honestly, I don't know of that many. We just don't have that many farms. So I don't know. I guess that was just my 2 cents. Is we really need some support in all of these farming endeavors in Delaware, because the only ones that do get support are growing corn and soy and chickens. It seems that way to me anyway.
Can I add something?
Absolutely.
The reality is that it all starts at the top. And if our legislator doesn't find urban agriculture and urban farming to be an interest to them, then it won't be, and the funding will not be there. I'm almost certain that, we do have the area, and that's where, again, it comes in with the politics of everything, of trying to have, because there are areas that are available for farming, and especially in the urban area. I opted to take one of those vacant lots that are available, but it's also a matter of a preference. So when people don't want to cross the side, take a step on another side of the track, and they find it as an eyesore as opposed to a benefit, our legislatures think the same thing. So if we don't, and we keep asking them to take a look at what we're doing, because what we're doing is significant, without a doubt.
Absolutely.
So, pardon me?
I was agreeing, sorry. I gotta stop vocalizing on Zoom.
I had a little amen corner, right? Yeah. And so it's very significant, and that's why I also said that it's a movement, and we need to also come together and encourage people to make that movement, because we all have to eat, and we have to eat healthy. And we have to have that access. And you're absolutely right. It's not a matter of just growing soy and corn. It's a matter of growing healthy products for all ethnicities. And Miss Jackson, yes, please. Thank you.
Yeah, so because we're broadcasting live on Facebook, if you could either type questions into the chat and I can pull them in, or we'll disconnect the Facebook towards the end, and we'll give some space for audience questions as well. So Rose, I'm going to come back to you if that's all right. Given that your business model and philosophy is all about kind of healthy living, have you seen areas that have access to urban agriculture centers and community gardens and more community-based food supply? Have you seen kind of a shift in the mindset of kind of lifestyle and healthy living?
I'm smiling because that work is happening. So I'll answer that in two parts. One, Bellevue Farms. I'm a shout out Elisa a million times. Bellevue Farms, KAVI Wellness runs a nutrition program at the Bellevue Community Center with their youth. And I've had the privilege of being able to teach them a little bit more about herbalism, and then having that be paired with the backing of them being able to go outside in their community and see the farm and see the people that work with them in their schools and out of their schools and see their community and bring them there. That is such a privilege for these kids to normalize what that looks like, right? And so that's the first thing to say. I have to bring up the village. Just the other day, when I'm on the phone with Mrs. Rich and I'm hearing the people talking about, oh, where do I put this? How do I do this? Where am I planting this? That's where we build that community, right? I can't say enough about Honeybee. I can't say enough about Honeybee and how much of a wonderful light it is in Charlie Square, where people can walk there and get access, where they can get their compost, where they can get this education. And so I'm excited because when you're talking about where is this happening in Wilmington, it's happening right here. And you're talking to the people that are doing that work. I think the second piece is the charge that we're all given when we do this work. We're working together to ensure that we're not working in silos anymore. There are a lot of really good, warm-hearted people that want to continue pushing urban ag, but when you had to ask, to what capacity, right? And so I think when we're talking about, if you're asking me, where do I see it? I can tell you these specific places that are doing that work. What I'm interested in figuring out is, what are the districts saying about this work? What are our representatives saying about this work? What is our governor saying about this work? So that we can have the resources to not have to continue to fend for ourselves, because for a lot of us, this is a labor of love. Right? For a lot of us, this is ancestral work that we're doing, but it can be and needs to be translated to food security for the state of Delaware. It needs to be translated to nutritional education for the state of Delaware. And I think that is super important when we're discussing this, because we as individuals that run these businesses, that run these organizations, we have a cap to our capacity. When we're given the resources, when we're able to work together, we're able to multiply that capacity so that we don't have to have so much of a question of who's getting what and who has the access to that. So I hope that was answering your question.
Fabulously. I do want to get some of the questions in the chat pulled into the conversation here because they're pretty good. Rose, I see you've answered a couple already, but just for those that aren't seeing that on Facebook, the question came about, do the panelists see a need for the counterpart of urban ag in rural areas where vulnerable folks use dollar stores to buy unhealthy food, which I think is kind of true for many parts of the city as well, a lot of access issues. So Rose, I saw you answer that, so maybe we'll just stick with you for a second so you can just highlight what you said in the chats for those that are watching on Facebook, and then we'll kick it off to the others.
Okay, yeah. So Marlene had asked a really important question, and I don't know if we're at this point in the Zoom call, but I'll just read off what I had said to her, that I do believe that a big portion of fixing that problem is amplifying the issues of food deserts that don't offer fresh food or access to fresh foods. And then of course, the second piece is educating. I think when she's discussing that idea of those that are in the spaces where they can only get that fresh food at dollar stores, you have to talk about what those communities are and why our city and why our state places specifically dollar stores in certain areas, because it's not necessarily the people in their homes and what they have been able to acquire. It's these places that have discount health, that are like a dollar store that doesn't necessarily, is not known for healthy foods, being placed and targeted into certain areas of the city, and what that looks like. And just to be frank, in most spaces where you find a dollar store, you'll also find a payday loan space. You'll also find a quarter laundromat, and that's not out of any regular design. When we talk about the history of Wilmington, you can look up redlining and you'll still find certain neighborhood charters that have rules against certain space, certain people taking in certain spaces, certain businesses being in certain places. And that is one of the biggest issues that we've had, is that there's so many legislations or so many things put in place that have never changed. And when we don't discuss these things and then we say, oh, we don't know what's going on, we just know in area codes 19802, 19801, and 19805, they're the most unhealthy, they're the least access to healthcare. It's not that people are choosing a place to fail their health. It's that these places are actually designed to either not give them that access to resources or make it extremely hard for them to be able to do so. And so instead of pushing out people whose families have lived in these spaces for generations, build the spaces that are here. When we see all these infrastructures going up in the city, but then there are other spaces in the city just blocks down the way that look like 1984. We have to be able to address that. And that's one of the reasons why I think it's so important for us to get that community buy-in from a higher level, because it does go so much deeper than the soil that we're in. So
I'm going to expand the question out a little bit. Why don't we kick over to Cecilia first? Do you feel like urban agriculture is a way to help get rid of some of these food deserts, or I know there's another term that came up in our pregame conversation, whether or not you should be really called like a food apartheid rather than a food desert. But in either case, do you see urban ag as kind of a solution to that access issue?
If it's going to be effective, if it's just talk, listen, I tell everyone, I don't have time to sit in the cushy chairs and come and talk about and have a meeting about an agenda to discuss what is being discussed for the next meeting. Come on out to the garden. I got some shovels. I got some gloves. I got, and get into it if you're really interested. I have people who's willing to volunteer their backyard. Come on out. Let's do this. Show me how to do it. And that's what it's about. But to go back to your comment in regards to the food desert, it's more or less, I think the comment was what we talked about before was food insecurity or food apartheid. Because food desert is something totally different. Food desert is a matter of the availability of fresh, altered, fresh organic food that is provided to a community, within less than a mile radius. And in most places, that's not happening, especially in the and I'm not even going to call it underserved anymore. It's just the unserved community, and so that is why we believe that it may really take a look at and consider that it may be considered a food apartheid. There are other ways that I kind of got kicked out of a situation when I actually looked at how not just food, but education, and that's food for thought, is distributed in different communities. And so if we are being, how would I say, stifled, if certain information is not being given to us in a proper way, but undertone ways, then we're being strangled. And it's another form of genocide, I think. If we're not getting the healthy food that we need, it becomes a major pandemic. Yeah, I use that word. because we're all in it now. And I think what's happening is the fact that people are starting to see that pandemic is wider than just COVID. You know, I looked at COVID as a blessing and a curse, because when people were realizing that they couldn't go out, but they could come to my garden. And because it's an outdoor setting, for one, and we were providing healthy food for people that didn't have access. So in answer to the question, I think it is a segue for us to really understand that it is an apartheid, because we're, you know, especially in the urban setting, so much funding. I had an opportunity to write a proposal, you know, that was given by the government for 2022. The only problem is I'm not a rural farmer. This funding was only for rural farmers. This funding was not available for urban settings. And it's the urban settings that is really saturated with unhealthy foods. And there is no healthy food. I haven't even seen a banana in a Dollar Tree. Okay. So, you know, let's call it for what it is, you know, and take a look at that and see what it is our people and our government can do. I mean, this whole panel, we're doing the darn thing right here in Wilmington. Now, before, back in November, Wilmington was the hot spot. So now we are right here, still in the hot spot, doing the darn thing, you know, and right, our neighbor is our president. So let's ring the bell. It's time.
Which hopefully will come with benefits other than traffic jams at some point. So I'm going to take a pause. I know we're having somebody's having difficulty with the chat, so I'm going to go ahead and ask Chantal to unmute. You should have a little pop up there, hopefully, to unmute so you can ask your question. Maybe. There we go.
Okay, I really appreciate your letting me do this. I am, and I'm not going to go on and on, but despite these glasses, I am visually impaired, and I can't see a lot of the small stuff. But anyway, I have thoroughly enjoyed what all of you all have said, and I do support farming and growing and those kinds of things. And yes, when you said that the funding was available to rural farmers, I could imagine that too. And as an aside, I think it would be great. Is this one or is everybody just have growing in common? Help me with that.
One thing I wanted to actually do, and Elisa actually was about to tag you onto this, is that to answer your question, we are all representing separate organizations. And so when we're talking about those silos, that's something that we're trying to break, coming together. But one of the, and I'll let Elisa tell you about it.
Well, I'll tell you the reason I ask. As a result of what you all have been saying, so many things pop into my head. Just for example, I am a rather mature aged lady these days, and I do have the visual disability. But is somebody like me who support all of your causes, is there somebody like me who could do something to support your land, support your farm, support what you're doing?
Absolutely. I'm gonna let someone else take it.
But
I can pick
but
up.
and if we don't answer those kinds of concerns and questions here and now, somebody, I would just hope before we leave, somebody would just direct me where to send these kinds of questions. For example, as you all talk, I didn't just come up with this on my own, but as I listened to just the wonderful stuff you all are doing, one of the things that crossed my mind is, believe it or not, despite all the gadgets and the gizmos and the computer stuff, and despite all of that, which is fine stuff, I can't imagine how life-changing growing some kind of produce or even flowers, but I mean, especially produce, I can't imagine how monumental that would be in the lives of young folks, especially if some of these young folks could take it home to mama to put on their tables. I mean, those are some of the things that crossed my mind, and children, if they would just have a sense of accomplishment, and they would have something to feed, something healthy to put in their bellies instead of going to Mickey D's all the time. And the last issue I would love to pose to your community is, do you think our local government is going to pass the marijuana law in Delaware? Because they're talking about it. Have you heard that?
Might have to save that conversation for a different live stream.
All I'm saying is that's in the news. That is currently in the news. As a matter of fact, the Wilmington City Council has brought it up, and right now they're looking for some big. They're looking for various enterprises to support the endeavor. And I said, well, why should they make all the money? But anyway, I'm finished. Thank you for your time.
Ms. Jackson, I just wanted to let you know that's one of our goals at the Village Tree. We are continuously working on our infrastructure. And because of the fact that I may not be as seasoned as you are, but I got a little salt and pepper. So we have raised beds for seniors, and behind the fact that my mother at one point was legally blind, so we have like certain areas, especially with the herbs, that you can have that texture connection with the and so I've been talking with the Department of the Visually Impaired to try to get some kids to come out and experience it. So you're right on point, and I listen. So and we all of the ladies that's in here, we're all together in an urban coalition. So we try to stay on point of what we're doing, and if you're doing that over there, then maybe we could do this here. So not reinvent the wheel, but just have it roll a whole lot smoother.
Right, and benefit a lot of people.
Absolutely.
And please call me Chantal.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, Miss Chantal, I
Yes, ma'am.
piggyback off of Cecilia's point that, and your original point about the individual organizations versus a larger organization. And I think that, you know, just the real is not that we haven't realized that food insecurity is an issue, but COVID definitely put some things into perspective about our own resilience. And what does that look like when we're all operating in these small, like Rose said, silos? And like, how can we make a greater impact? And it definitely, I believe that working together is essential. And it's also essential to get our point across to our legislature, to say like, we're all doing this work together, and doing it together is what's going to make a greater impact statewide. And so we need to be able to say that and be the advocates for on the legislative level. So one of those things is like working now with Delaware Urban Farm and Food Coalition. And then also we've been engaging in local grower conversations with, because of this new Urban Acres produce program. And so I think that there's really an opportunity for us to now start to have a productive dialogue with our legislatures so that we can get some policy, or at least to begin the consideration of policy that's going to positively impact our urban growing community, that there is so much potential, but we do have to have that investment. We have to have the investment from the legislatures. We have to have the investment from the people in Delaware who have the means. So it's not just trying to get food, like get access to food for people. The people have to put their money where their mouth is. And if we have lots of people go to Whole Foods and they buy, say, spend top dollar on organic foods, hey, go to your local urban farm and go invest some of your hard-earned money in your local farming community, because that's where you're going to see the greatest impact. And so I think that as just working together, we can get that. I mean, right now we have this platform that we can talk about this and hopefully get some people to start to look at what's really going on around Wilmington and outside of Wilmington, and the efforts that are being made, and going back to building relationships, whether that's with our community members, with our legislatures, and building that relationship with our local agriculture community, I think is what we're trying to do.
So I did want to give a shout out to it looks like our one elected official that has joined us, Senator Pinckney. Thank you very much for joining us this evening. So not just towards Senator Pinckney, but generally speaking for the legislators or policymakers out there, either watching on Facebook or that will watch this on the replay or on the rewind. How can local and state governments either help or hurt the prospect of expanding urban agriculture? I mean, have other states done very successful things that could be brought here to Delaware, or has Delaware done some not great things that have actually stifled the progress that could be being made? And Elisa, why don't we start with you, and then we'll hop over to Karen and work our way back around.
I'm sorry, I got distracted. Can you repeat that for me?
Absolutely.
Karen, take that first, please.
Yeah, go for it, Karen. I'll drop the question in the chat.
Thank you, Dustin. And I was actually going to kind of piggyback on something Elisa said, because when she was talking, it's an education piece for people. People have this misunderstood idea about food, where it comes from, how much it costs, how it gets to us, how healthy. I mean, they're just so uneducated. And I think that maybe there's a place for that in all this, is an education piece, for our legislators and that trickle down to the community. I don't know who, I'm sure maybe some of y'all were on that comprehensive plan call the other night for the 10-year plan for Newcastle County. And and at least what I heard was open space for recreation. And I actually, after the call, I was like, you know, you always kind of feel stupid after you speak your mind or whatever, like, did I say the wrong thing? But we don't, and we do need recreation spaces for people who don't have recreation space. But I come from North Carolina, and I'm gonna tell y'all are spoiled with parks up here. You're spoiled with wild areas up here, as far as that the government owns to save just for that, but they don't prioritize food growing. And so I think that, and then therefore they don't prioritize local food that is available to buy, like the farmers markets, like Highland Orchard, like my store, you know, like supporting the urban growers that are on this platform today. I mean, I don't know how y'all are, but I'm certainly not overrun with people trying to come into my store. You know, I am barely hanging in there, and I've been barely hanging in there for 12 years. So, you know, what is this magic thing that needs to happen that people prioritize their food? Well, it's heavily subsidized by the government to keep the food cheap, you know. So that's one thing, and that's why the weed is gonna make a splash, is because a lot of people are gonna make a lot of money from it. You know, and that's why the big growers are getting the kickbacks, is because they're making a ton of money. And then, you know, I just see the $200 million Mount Air settlement, you know, that comes out. I mean, they're just somehow there has to be a shift in what people in this state and in this Highland and in this community value, you know, because they don't value human life. They don't value the environment. They don't value our fellow species. They don't even value dignity. You know, they value the almighty dollar, and they value shiny, pretty things that look good from the outside. And meanwhile, our community is suffering so greatly with violence, with illness, with poverty, and it's disgusting. So we need somehow to wake people up and value what the ladies on this call and everyone who's interested is doing. That's what we need. How can we do that? You know, is it an education piece? Is it a freaking, you know, stop traffic nonviolent protest? You know, like, because what are we waiting for? Are we waiting for people to literally starve? Like, we're at that point. What is it now? 1 in 4 is going hungry in our area. Is it 1 in 4? 1 in 6? Somebody must know on here. I'm just saying, enough of begging people to care about their food. I mean, give me a break. It's your food. Like, I think an education piece, like maybe there's some way to really hit each of them up with some hardcore statistics. Maybe you guys have some ideas. I don't know.
Sorry for my
Karen, I really hate when you hold back, you know, I really do.
Sorry for my distraction. I've got household stuff happening around me.
Glenn's a big part of community agriculture, Elisa. Your husband helps so much. So thank you to your whole family.
Well, thank you. And, you know, so my husband works for the Challenge program, and they have been a pivotal piece in building our community gardens around the city, and also helping to maintain them. I don't know what we'd do at Bellevue Farms if we didn't have with my husband and the Challenge program come over and help us. They've really been so important. If you don't know what the Challenge program is, it's a construction training company in Wilmington, and they do amazing work. So definitely look it up. To the question about like what can our local governments do, or what they have done, I think just the very first piece is really opening up the dialogue with the people who are doing the work. So like, let's get to know, let's have our governments know what we are doing, because I mean, so there's the conversation with the city of Wilmington. It was a resolution that was passed regarding community gardens. Most of, at least from what we had heard, was that no one had actually had conversations with people who are doing community gardens in and around the city, or urban agriculture in general. And it would be really beneficial if we could all sit down at the table and talk about what it is that we're doing and how we can make it better. I mean, there's definitely things that happen. I mean, when I go back to the relationship building piece, for instance, like if you don't have community buy-in, it's very difficult to sustain these things. So I understand that like abandoning gardens can be an issue. However, the more people that get involved, the less likely those things happen, and the more likely that they thrive. And so, if legislatures we can participate in those conversations about a policy around those things, then we're going to increase the opportunity to keep these things sustainable and keep them thriving and have them growing. I mean, I really see urban agriculture as not just a food accessibility piece, but an economic opportunity. I mean, when gardens are thriving, when urban agriculture is thriving, the property values around it go up. So like, do we want to just get rid of those things if they're not protected by the legislatures? Like, we need conversation. We need like the language in policy to say, you know, that these things are important, and we can be there. We can start that conversation to say why it's important, and not just us, but the people who are involved with them, because there are lots of people in this community who are really excited and passionate about having a garden in their neighborhood, having an urban farm in their neighborhood, for whatever the reasons are. So I think that just you know, placing some value on the relationships that are generated, and then and the conversation with the people who are doing work is the way that we really need to start. To get the local governments involved.
Anybody else want to jump in before I ask the next question?
Well, I mean, I guess I would just like, I mean, if that's the route we're going to go to for support, because I get in my mind, wow, somebody just dropped something big in the chat. Who's that? But in my mind, I tend to shy. Oh, it's Miss Courtney. Hey, Courtney. It's in my mind, I shy away from government help because it just, I don't know. I'm trying to figure out a way to go with that. But I tend to, which is why my business is a business. It's not a co-op, you know, because I haven't, it moves so slow and it's so big and there's so much bureaucracy. But if we are going to, I've been studying cooperative farming and business models and closed economies, you know, in communities where you just take them out of it and just do your own darn thing. But if we're going to go the route of trying to get support, then what does that look like? Because I'm like Cecilia, I don't like to leave. Even I consider this a meeting of the minds right here. It is, you know, networking, but it's also, you know, what do we do? Do we print a flyer and have one side be, you know, why this work is important, and the other side be what we are all doing? Is that, I mean, I was going to say, I'm not in the city. My store's in the city. My farm's not in the city. But, you know, what do we do to educate them and reach out to them, I guess, Elisa? Because I think you're totally right. And I appreciate you bringing us back to that, because I sometimes miss that step. And you're so everyone here is probably a lot more. I mean, I'm in the community in my store, but not on my farm. Y'all are in the community. So we have to, let's do that.
Karen, this is a statewide issue. So don't put yourself in the box. This is a statewide, and that makes you more invested because of the fact that you have a business in the city and you have a farm in the county, you know, and this is just one county. You know, this is a battle that goes on because, you know, now I've inherited some I have to deal with Sussex County. So we've got land that's working out there. So I have to really educate myself, you know, even though it's in the rural area, I still am not privy to the rural privileges because of the magnitude. So take yourself out of the box because
I mean,
that you were in the box, but you know, because you are You are voices to be reckoned with.
Yeah, I just mean that I'm not, y'all have people come into your gardens from your communities, I guess is what I'll say. And I didn't do that yet in my community. I'm going backwards and I regret that. And I educated myself. And now that I know better, I'm going to do better. But my thing is, okay, let's do what you said, Elisa. Let's communicate with them and let's invite them to this party and see if we could. Did y'all see that Sherry that runs Sierra Club? Like she said, Matt Myers got some money he's sitting on. Well, let's see if we can get you guys some money or get, I guess he's county. But yeah, I don't know.
Well, if you want to, I mean, just from my little bit of experience working with local governments, showing up to town meetings or showing up to the council meetings, that's like the first step. And having more people to do that with, that's another step. I mean, there is also reaching out to council people or other representatives who have expressed interest in their urban farming community. Like, let's engage them in the conversation first, and then they can help us get into the larger conversations. And with the Delaware Urban Farm and Food Coalition, we are getting ready to have a conversation with City Councilwoman Darby, and we will be hopefully putting a presentation together that we would be inviting all of you to participate on, to add your input to that. So I think that, education is definitely that one piece that's going to be helpful in pushing our agenda and getting people to recognize that the work that's being done is worth investing in.
I think if there's one thing that I could add to this particular topic, it would be, I wanted to give some of our participants just some generalized definitions of some of the things that we're discussing. Everyone on this panel knows I refer to myself as a baby urban farmer because there is just such a vast amount of information in this field. And I'll be honest, when we continue to talk about education, part of that is understanding what the problem is, right? And so I did just want to go over 3 very quick definitions to prove a point that when we were talking about food deserts is something that emerged in the 70s and the 80s. But it was this concept that certain demographics were not getting access to fresh foods. Like Cecilia had stated, I think it's within, like, if you can't get to a space that has fresh food within 10 miles, meaning if you walked 10 miles from your front door without a car or whatever, maybe if you couldn't get up to 202, you would only be able to see things like corner stores. Because when we hear the word desert, there's this idea that it obscures the vibrant life in the food systems in those communities. And it also implies that these areas are naturally occurring. That's not the case. There are certain spaces in the city that are riddled with liquor stores and riddled with corner stores, but do just not have access to that fresh food. And I wanted to explain that definition to the people that are here, because I know there was a time where that understanding of what a food desert was very foreign to me. And so I don't want to isolate people out of that conversation. The second term that I wanted to amplify was this new idea of what a food swamp was, where there's areas of where there's fast food and there's junk food, but there's still not that fresh food. So that would look like maybe you're going halfway up to 202, or maybe you're going down Governor Prince. You would be able to find the dollar store, you'd be able to find the Popeyes, but the food line, you'd have to go about a couple miles down the opposite way. And when we're talking about this access, you have to ask yourself, who needs help in that way? If you don't have a car, if you are not living alone and have that space, who that would be an issue for. And then the last bit was this idea of a food mirage. And a food mirage is actually the phenomenon where there are places to buy food, but they are either too expensive or they're not accessible for that neighborhood. And that actually can look like some of the people in those neighborhoods behind the Sprouts that just opened up, where in that district, it seems like it's thriving. But if the people in that space can't afford that food, then what is the purpose? And so when when Karen brings up, where's the support for Highland Orchards, which is right down that street, there's something to be said about who is supporting the local access to food, because there are people that are already doing that work, but they're not being supported by the higher government. And so when we talk about engaging our government, I think part of it does look like what Elisa is saying, asking and putting out and explaining and expressing the work that we do. But I think also a part of this is going to look like understanding the history of Delaware, understanding the history of the city and the county, and why certain areas were not traditionally given certain things. And I have to say, as the person who runs the wellness business and talks about holistic healing, with this era of COVID, the demographics that were hit the most were African American and Latino. When we talk about food access, the people that are disproportionately negatively affected are African American and Latino. When we're talking about people that don't have the best healthcare, it's African American and Latino. And there is a map of Wilmington that will show the neighborhoods that have majority of those people, and those are the people that are in these food deserts. And so unfortunately, we have to have that conversation about cultural competency when we're talking about this, because it's not just, I live in Wilmington and I want some fresh food, right? There are layers to this. This is a multifaceted issue. And so if we're bringing it up to our government, we're going to actually have to be able to address the history that's happened in Delaware, to be able to meet them where they're at and say, this is what we know has been the trend. This is what we need to break to fulfill the full community that we have here, regardless of what they look like, but understanding who is directly being targeted. And I just think that is such an important piece to not put astray. And I wanted to just amplify that at this moment.
Thank you for doing so. Yeah, I on that last definition, I kind of have that concern with one of the grocery stores that's getting put up on the other side of the tracks on I think it's Lancaster, I believe it is, that road that Cab Calloway's on. You keep going straight. I think it's gonna be like a Wegmans or something. And I've been to one Wegmans in New Jersey, and I mean, talking about expensive produce, man. It's the sticker shock when I walked into that store. Now it's been a number of years, but I'm looking at the communities around the area, and they have that 7-day-a-week farmers market that's there. And I'm just kind of concerned, like, is that Wegmans going to push out that farmers market that actually does have affordable food, right? And then now it's either you have this super expensive grocery store or now nothing, right? And so I do have big concerns on like, I had so many friends that are like, oh, we're going to Wegmans. Like, yeah, but what's the impact going to be for the community in that area? So
the community in that area wouldn't be able to afford Wegmans.
Right.
Period.
Exactly.
And so that is another form of gentrification. So you're going to pull the people out, which goes back to the underlying of what I was saying about genocide. We're either going to move them out, and to create an environment that's comfortable for someone else, as opposed to giving the people the tools for them to manage where they are. Because Wegmans, we're talking about, that was a Save-A-Lot that, which is not the highest quality, but at least they had some fresh produce there, and it was affordable for the community, and that community could afford it. So who's going to come out of their way to shop at the Wegmans, which also again pushes the people that's there. They're going to be stuck in a food desert because they won't be able to afford it.
Yeah,
it's that mirage that Rose was talking about.
Exactly. Yeah, I love that 7-day-a-week farmers market, and I really hope that they stick around. We are coming up. We got about 10 minutes left, and I did want to touch on a couple of things that have really been centered around our entire conversation here, primarily of which is, how do we ensure that equity and social justice are kind of baked in as if our politicians do help us expand urban agriculture through you wonderful people working in this field, how can we ensure that equity and social justice kind of baked into the model that we start seeing? It doesn't become kind of a corporatized endeavor.
would say to start with the data. When we talk about social justice, when we're talking about environmental justice and all these things as it relates to urban ag, it gets personal because we're talking about our families that are trying to live their lives. We're talking about our neighbors. We're talking about our friends, our loved ones. However, I think when we're talking about engaging our government, it looks like data. It looks like numbers, because the things that we do and the work that we do, it's not a matter of if it works, it's how long we can sustain offering these things to show that it works with communities. Karen and I are both in a farmer training program that spans the Chesapeake Bay. And so we get this really great opportunity so often to learn and see different models from other spaces where it works. And there is data that proves that it works, these cooperative opportunities that have been supported in other spaces by their governments. What that looks like when someone gets that funding, what they can do and how they can make it sustainable. There are a lot of spaces currently in Baltimore, Maryland, that are really paving the way when we're talking about urban agriculture and how it's transforming communities. And so I think when we're speaking towards Delaware, we have those resources. The University of Delaware Extension Program has resources, but with the work that Elisa and all of us are coming together with the coalition, what we're doing, building that kind of collective, I think is one of the ways that we can show and prove. And I think when we have that data and we have those numbers, it's really hard to combat. I think in a lot of those other spaces, when Karen was talking about that Newcastle County meeting, one of the things that I know about the folk that have come behind the working on those recreational areas is that they came together years ago to make those numbers and to put it out there so that they could put on paper, this is what it would do, this is how it would look. And that just doesn't come out of thin air, finding those examples and trying to not just duplicate, but perfect for this space what that would look like. And so my hope is that in the upcoming months, we can put our heads together and again, get some resources and funding to be able to further our work by emulating another aspect where it made sense and adapting that to Delaware. But that starts with the data, because we can get blue in the face. I could tell you every sob story about an unhealthy family member that needed to have access to food, but that's just another story. But if I express to you the numbers that are actually extremely alarming to this day in 2021, that's a little bit harder to ignore. And so that's my hope, to be able to get that data and to be able to present that in a way where we can further have better footing to get the resources that we need.
Anybody else want to add anything onto that?
I would jump in, and I definitely agree with you. And I didn't mean to minimize data in the beginning there. It was just more, it's not my wheelhouse. And in fact, what I go back to with regard to equity and social justice is, I guess, starting at the beginning, which is who is at the table having the conversations that make decisions. And when we look around to see in our organizations, just to start with our organizations, who is there, are we representing the people that we're saying we want to serve or we want to work with? Do we actually all have those perspectives? Do we have the diversity of perspective to understand what it is that people need? Is the community being engaged, or are we just assuming what people want because we think it's right? So I just think that the way to really encourage some social justice is to give people voices and to have that diversity at the table for making those decisions, even if that's starting at the very small organizational level.
Cecilia or Karen, any closing thoughts on that? So the last question I always end with is how can people help? How can people get involved? All of that sort of stuff. So I will why don't I go around for everybody, and if you could give me some high points on what you think people could help the most with, or how people can stay involved in this effort or get involved in community-based urban agriculture for those that have that experience of building a community farm. I'd love to hear any advice that you all have to offer for folks that are watching this at home. Cecilia, I'm going to start with you.
Throw me under the bus. Okay. And speaking with most of the people in the panel, hence the word, I can speak for the Village Tree, the word of community. So we're open. You just got to come on by, and I have invited several governmental officials. Some have come by, some has, thought about coming by, and some clearly even said they wasn't going to come by based on where my garden is located. So the door is open, and the contact information, if you come out there. I've had visitors that stopped by, saw the number, sent me a text. I wouldn't be too far, or maybe I was, but at least I knew that you were there, and that we could arrange a time to come by the garden. We are we also have increased our volunteers, which I'm so grateful for. And thank goodness, with the collaboration with other organizations that's here on the panel, I have an opportunity to, we're actually have a position open for a full-time youth person to work at the garden. And that's with the help of the challenge program. So, we are a diamond in the rough. So we welcome anyone to come help us smooth out the community and smooth out the garden. So it's open, and don't worry about if you don't have the tools. We'll have the tools for you, and a smile.
Karen, I'm going to kick it over to you next.
Thank you. Well, I mean, I guess if I can just say one quick thing, I will do my best to join in on engaging our government. But I personally believe that our government has broken their social contract with us as constituents. And I believe they are not doing their job to keep us safe, because I don't know how much people know about the fact that we are really in a climate crisis. We're in an extinction species crisis. We do not have very long to address this. And Delaware is the lowest level by mean lying state. So we are going to see these effects. We already are. I've been working with local farmers for 16 years. In the past 2 years, they have started talking about how this weather pattern that we have now is affecting growing. It's affecting crops. So that being said, I mean, everyone's got to acknowledge that. Everyone's got to grieve it. And then everybody's got to pull up their boots and get working. That's all there is to it. You got to face it, grieve it, and move forward. That being said, amen. Yes. What Cecilia said, you want to do something, do it. Walk out your door, meet your neighbor, walk out your door, plant something in a pot and see it grow. Go to your local farm and spend some money there, or ask how you can help, or spread the word. Don't shop at Wegmans. Don't shop at Sprouts. Don't shop at Trader Joe's. Don't shop at Whole Foods. Shop at your local grocery store. Shop at your farmer's market. Meet your neighbors. Grow some food with them. Get together. Like it's boots on the ground, getting out. And I'm talking to myself right now too, because it's not easy to put yourself out there, and we're all going to make mistakes, and you might say the wrong thing, and you might embarrass yourself or feel awkward, but you just have to go out there and do it, because that's what's going to save us with these challenges. What we have coming up against us is community and working together and knowing each other. And I feel so blessed to be on this call with these amazing women, and thank you, Dustin, for putting it together, because you know, we're doing that work, as scary as it is, and we're just encouraging other people to do it too. So just go meet your neighbors and go grow some food.
Rose, I'm gonna kick it over to you next.
Okay, I think if I'm being completely honest, I would like to say that I am a product of that fire that Cecilia and Karen are talking about, because I was not someone who was in the soil. You're talking to someone who is scared of every bee and bug known to man, and someone who grew up in a space where culturally healthiness just did not look the same for people that look like me. And it wasn't until I had the time and the privilege to be able to realize it's not that my health looks different than anybody next to me, is that we're not getting the same opportunities. And I think it's the work that my parents' generation have done that I've been able to have the privilege to say, F that, I want to figure out more. I want to be able to live past my parents and my grandparents. I want to be able to have a good quality of life. I want my neighbors and everyone that I work with to be able to have access to healing. And that looks like that education, but it also looks like an invitation. Right? It looks like somebody saying, hey, come to my community garden, because that's what it took for me to get involved. Somebody saying, come and see it. Not just, oh, this is nice, I see that you do this in the community, but come and show up. And so what I can say for everybody that's on the call, that if you at this point haven't yet felt like this is a call to action for you specifically, it is. It absolutely is. We need your help. And we want your help and we want your input, regardless of what you know or not. If you have hands, we can put them to work. If you got feet, we can tell you where to go. And so the other three women that are on this call, they have established programs and spaces that are fantastic. And I have told all of them, I'm just here for the ride. So if you just need somebody to hold your hand, to take you down the street to one of the community gardens, to take you to Bellevue Farms, to buy you lunch at Honeybee, then we can just do that together. And so genuinely, this is my invitation to you individually to please reach out, because we would love to have you. The more community input we have, the better standing we have to build this together, because we're doing this with you in mind. So to please not let any idea of miseducation or lack of education or lack of skill set, just your interest alone, even if you don't want to go to the garden, you just want to talk to me about the food that you eat, we can do that. Because it makes a difference. And I think we're in a really beautiful space when Karen is talking about where our environment is, the time is absolutely now. And so yes, every bit that you can offer is appreciated. So that's my piece. Thank you.
Wonderful. And last but certainly not least, and following three tough acts to follow, Elisa.
I think Rose should have ended it, because that was
I know.
I guess I would just say that, you know, and there are people who don't want to get their hands dirty. And so I'm in a diversity, equity, and inclusion class right now. And one of the speakers said, you can tell a lot about what somebody cares about by looking at their checkbook. So I'm going back to money. If you have the means, invest in your community. And it doesn't take that much. I just heard last night, it's like for every $1 spent on the local level, you generate $7 in community economic activity. So like, it means a lot for you to say, you know what, I'm going to take 10% of what I've been spending at some big corporate grocery store, and I'm going to spend it at my local farmer's market. I'm going to spend it at my urban farm, because then it radiates. It's not just going to corporations. And then meanwhile, all that money that goes to corporations is minimal going to farmers. So when we put it directly into the hands of the farmers, the urban farmers, we're putting it directly back into the community. And so I say, think about your financial situation, and can you spend a little bit more on locally grown food? Can you spend it more on your community programs? And you don't have to do much. All you got to do is, you know, go out there and buy it. So that's what I got.
And you're buying food anyway, right? As
Exactly.
we've said a number of times on this call tonight, everybody's got to eat. So
That's amazing, Elisa. That's what we need to get. Maybe our legislators could put something out saying all that to their constituents. Maybe that's a.
Absolutely.
Marie, I know you got them weekly constituent update emails. She's laughing.
Can I just say something? A lot of people, the village tree is more, we're in one spot, but trees grow all over the place. So like, that's one of the reasons why I said this is more than just a community garden. It's about a movement. So if you want to join, you want to volunteer, you want to donate, check out thevillagetree.org. Holler at Lisa. I want her to, everybody put out their website, because if you, when you know better, we do better. So and like us on Facebook. So I want to thank the Sierra Club for inviting us and giving us this platform and the opportunity to expose and let people know that we're more than just a farm. We're a movement. Get ready.
Well, it's absolutely our pleasure to share what voice and what platform that we have with fine people like you all. So thank you all so much for joining us. Thank you for everybody that that joined us. I know this was well past our normal time for a live stream and a little bit later in the evening, but I really appreciate the folks that were able to get on. Those that watched on Facebook, love you guys too. And for those that weren't able to make it, as I was getting texts kind of throughout the program today that Zoom was not letting everybody on, I'm sorry. This will be up on our YouTube page. It'll be up on our website in, going out into the future, and we'll share it again on Facebook afterwards, so more people can get to see this great information. And I will also share these links in the Facebook thread once that's done processing as well. A lot of good links from everybody, and those that are on the Zoom, you can save the chat. There's a little ... button on the chat function. If you click on that, you should have an option to save the chat, so that way you'll have all these great links from everybody. So thank you all so much. Thank you to the panelists for all the work that you're doing in this area. This is our last live stream. We're going to be venturing back out into the world and doing outdoor stuff, and maybe we'll do some kind of hybrid virtual and live sort of programming. We're figuring that out. To celebrate the success of the live stream, we are having a big event on Thursday. We're doing our electric bike raffle, which today's the last day to get tickets for the e-bike. If you're interested in that, they're $25. You can get those on our Facebook, on our sierraclub.org/Delaware. There's a link on there. And we have guests from our 4 most popular viewed topics: birding, biking, gardening for wildlife, and shoot, now I can't remember the 4th one. Birding, biking, gardening for wildlife, and it'll be a surprise. Come and see and you'll find out. But it is on the 13th on Thursday at 6 o'clock. So we'd love to see everybody there. It's actually going to be just on Zoom. It's not going to be on Facebook. So the mic will be to the audience to ask their questions directly from those folks. So definitely join us for that. So thank you all very much. It's been a pleasure doing these live streams. I will not be there on Thursday. I'm not going to be the MC. So for everybody watching, thank you so much for attending these live streams over the past year. It's been amazing to share the platform with so many amazing people. So thank you guys for rounding it out tonight. I really appreciate you all.
Thank you.
That's
Have a
it.
good one.
All right. Bye, y'all.
Have a good
Get out in
one.
the dirt. See you
Dig in the
soon.
dirt.
Should be a bumper sticker, I think.
Yes. Putting down in the dirt.